The bean holes, it's Eric and Nate, the bean holes, they're really pretty great, so shut up and listen to them talk. Eric and Nate.
Welcome to the bean holes. I'm Nate.
I'm Eric.
And today we are continuing our discussion about Stan Lee, better known, actually much worse known, as Stanley Martin Lieber, which we forgot to mention in our history episode.
Yep.
So there you have it. That's his real name, baby.
Better known as Stan Lee.
Yeah, but this is cooler if you did, so we should have actually done a cold open with a question.
Hey, Nate.
Yes, Eric?
Don't you wish that a few Stan Lee properties were more popular?
I do, Eric.
Well, I wish you didn't, because it'd be a lot cooler if you did.
All right, great. And now, welcome to the Beanholes.
So now you know what we're talking about. Stan Lee had his hand in so many pools throughout his career, and obviously not all of them are going to be Spider-Man, the Captain America, the Fantastic Four. There's going to be some duds in there, but obviously even the duds have their fans. So we went into Stan Lee's history and found things that he was a part of that we wish, personally, were more popular than they actually are. And I'm going to start off with one of mine, a show that you and I both at least knew of. I don't know if we watched it live on television.
I watched the whole first season.
Same here. It was a sci-fi show produced by Stan Lee's POW Entertainment titled Who Wants to Be a Superhero?
Yeah. Now, when Eric says it was a sci-fi show, he doesn't mean it was a science fiction program.
Right.
He means it was a television show put on the Sci-Fi Network.
SYVI. SYVY.
SYFY.
Oh, yeah. What did I say? See? Maybe they should just go back to the original name of sci-fi. Like, they just spelled it correctly, and then they just misspelled it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure when Who Wants to Be a Superhero was on, it was actually
Just the regular sci-fi.
Sci-Fi.
So the show came out during a time when reality shows were popular. They were like the biggest things on television, and the idea was to have open auditions for your superhero, that you could show up to an audition dressed as your hero, pitch your hero name and your powers, and through an American Idol type judging, it would dwindle down to, I think, about 12 contestants who would then go on to go through various...
They had to go through competitions. They were given missions to do, and it was obviously fake, but they had to, like, out in public face supervillains. I know that there was one guy who later on... It reminds me of Ryback, the wrestler, but there was a big, muscled, bald guy with sunglasses, and his superhero was the Iron Enforcer. And his whole thing was just like, I have a big gun. And I remember he got eliminated, and then they brought him back on the next episode as like, here's your villain. Yeah.
And it was like a big shock that they got this guy to be a villain.
Yeah.
The whole point of the show was that it would get down to about 3 superheroes, and then I think the public then got to vote on who they enjoyed the most. And the winner of that competition would not only get a Dark Horse comic of their own, but they would also be featured with their own sci-fi movie.
It was Dark Horse?
Yeah, it was Dark Horse Comics.
You get Stan Lee involved in creating a show, and Marvel won't even give him a one-off comic.
But yeah, it was an interesting show. I mean, it was silly. It didn't take itself too seriously, but it was fun, and it did have a second season, which I didn't watch. And here I am saying I wish it was more popular, but I think the concept of people coming out with their own creations of superheroes on a national level is really interesting to me, and I even think. Having more episodes like American Idol, they usually throughout a season have 3 to 4 episodes devoted to the auditions, because those are some of the funnest points of the entire show. You get to see the people with really lame, American Idol, the bad singing along with the really good singing, and with superheroes, it reminds me of the movie Mystery Men, when they're looking for new members, and Dane Cook is the Waffle Nader or Waffle Man. And you just have to, so I think it just would be fun to have a show like that, and I wish it kept going. Maybe if they tweaked the format a little bit to not be as corny, maybe giving these people a chance to explain their hero to children, and then have maybe even children vote themselves, like if they went to like a children's hospital, and hey, which one did you like the most coming into your rooms and whatnot. Just spitballing here, but
which of these adults did you enjoy sneaking into your room?
But yeah, I think it just could have gone on to do bigger things, and we'll obviously cover more. Not obviously, but we will cover more in another episode.
Yeah, our next episode we're going to get a lot more into our disappointments after the first season was over. So, all right, well, good property, Eric.
Yes.
One thing that a property I only learned about recently that is fairly popular is the Zodiac Legacy. This is young adult. I shouldn't even call it young adult. This is kids' books. It's novels. They're aimed at 9 to 12-year-olds, so that's why I wouldn't call them young adult. But it's co-created by Stanley and Stuart Moore, I believe. And I'll just look up the illustrations, because it's a novel, but it's illustrated. And the illustration is by Andy Tong. It's published by Disney Worldwide. So it's about a Chinese American kid named Stephen Lee.
No relation.
Who on a field trip to Hong Kong gains powers from his Chinese zodiac symbol.
Okay.
And there's a lot of superheroes. There's people that gain power in the series from their zodiac symbol, and there's villains that want to steal that power, and it's a really cool thing. I wish more people knew about it because as we mentioned once in our Black Panther month, Stan Lee did an incredible amount for trying to get representation of every minority group he could think of in the comics. And a lot of this, even though he was editor-in-chief at Marvel, it didn't necessarily, not everything he tried to do sold well, and not everything he was trying to do starting back in the 60s and 70s looks so good to us nowadays. A lot of things that are groundbreaking for equality and representation 30, 40, 50 years ago would be exactly the kind of thing that upsets people today.
Right.
But he always has done that, and the Zodiac Legacy series is only a few years old. I wouldn't be surprised if another book or a few books would come out, but as I understand it, it did come to a kind of satisfying conclusion with the 3 or 4 books they did put out. But
it seems really interesting too that to bring in the zodiac symbols and whatnot. I would have the power of a scorpion.
All right. I think I would be...
Which is way better than bringing in the animals of the Chinese New Year, because then I would have the power of a horse.
Wait a minute. The Chinese New Year is the same animals as the Chinese Zodiac.
Not all of them.
Okay, Eric. Anyway,
is this seriously a thing? Is there a year of the
fish?
It's
the year of the... Yeah, it's...
Okay.
So, okay.
I was leaning to it because I wanted you to bring out the list of animals.
I'll bring up the list of animals. You just want to say Dwayne the Pig, don't you?
No, not at all.
So we got Stephen the Tiger. Oh, by the way, that's Stephen Lee is
the Tiger. So where do you fit Pisces in there? Pisces is a...
Now I know why you said Scorpion, because I was sitting here trying to think.
Scorpio. Yeah.
Okay, that's not the Chinese Zodiac.
Okay, that you were saying Zodiac, and I was thinking the Zodiac I know of, not regular, but
all right. So I would be Taurus, the bull, in that Zodiac.
Yeah, then I would be Eric the horse.
And you're mixing them up again.
Okay,
you'd be Eric the horse. I would be Nate the goat, I believe, or the ram.
Chinese Zodiac.
Yeah.
In the regular Zodiac, you'd be the bull.
Yes.
All right, then I'd be the scorpion.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
There we go.
All right. Hey. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I never knew about it until right now, and
well, very cool.
It is something I would be interested in looking at. So my other piece is not something that Stan Lee really helped create, but in a way he did kind of help shape the movie, and I mentioned it in last week's episode. It is the movie Mallrats. Out of Kevin Smith's 6-film View Askew universe, Mallrats is the one that's kind of the redheaded stepchild. You know, Clerks is popular. It's the one that started it all. Chasing Amy was really big at the time. Dogma was huge. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Clerks 2. And Mallrats is the one that just kind of sits there, and to me it's one of the more quotable movies. It's the one that seems the most fun, that Smith had the most fun making.
Tell him Steve Dave.
Yeah, Tell Him Steve Dave came from that. Jason Lee, that made me a fan of Jason Lee as an actor, and I've followed him since, and I know him as Brody from Mallrats. What's his name from the bald guy who plays Yondu?
Michael Rooker?
Yeah, Michael Rooker is the villain of the movie. Jay and Silent Bob are in it, and then you get this nice moment with Stan Lee, and just in this world of comic books that we live in, it's a movie that it's a cult film, but it's obviously just kind of stagnant, and I wish it would just get a little bit of a resurgence, because even a few years ago, Smith was trying to get a sequel off the ground, even a TV series, and was reaching out to a bunch of different platforms, even Netflix, who apparently passed on it. And at the time, Netflix was throwing money at everybody to do things, and I think they even were making sequels to cult films. They did Wet Hot American Summer, which you and I have discussed. Obviously brings a lot more star power to Netflix, but it just seemed weird that they didn't want to do something with Jay and Silent Bob, Jason Lee, Michael Rooker, Stan Lee. Like it seemed like a good thing to push on their platform. But yeah, I wish Mallrats came out to be a bigger film, because Kevin Smith has a lot of heart in what he does, and he's a really tell like it is guy. In the 90s, he may have been different than his current persona, but that movie was before its time, honestly, in terms of comedy and in terms of nerdiness. So,
all right. Yeah. The final thing I want to talk about is well, some people would say an unholy union, but Stan Lee did some work for DC Comics, and it's very interesting. It was actually I think starting in 2001.
Okay, so this is way after Amalgam.
Yeah, way after Amalgam. Okay. Amalgam, of course, being when Marvel and DC actually did crossovers where they merged superheroes, like Captain America and Superman became Super Soldier.
I actually have a comic book from Amalgam called Bruce Wayne, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he fights the Green Skull.
Joker with the Red Skull?
I mean, I guess that was the idea, but it is just like the Red Skull, but it's painted green.
All right. But he did a line called Just Imagine, and it is Stan Lee recreating some of the flagship characters of DC. So a lot of the key Justice League figures.
Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman.
Yep. Green Lantern, Flash, Robin, Shazam, Aquaman, Catwoman, Sandman. They did the Justice League of America. They did a Crisis storyline.
So now, was this a single issue for each character?
I believe it was a single issue for each character, and even the other little storylines, like Crisis and yeah, I think it was every single thing was just one.
Wow.
One issue. It wasn't, but again, speaking of his efforts to increase representation of all ethnicities and religions and everything, he made an effort to make sure that it wasn't all just a bunch of white guys for each character. First off was Batman. Oh, by the way, he also renamed some of their. He reimagined their alter egos.
So, like, I imagine the only thing he didn't change was just the name. Like, all right, the name's the same, but then everything else he probably had free range over.
Yeah, he went way off the original.
I see the name.
Yeah, so
Wayne Williams.
Yes, he tried to be alliterative as he often was with his Marvel characters. Peter Parker, Bruce Banner, Episode 2, Bob Banner,
Reed Richards,
Stony Stark. So yeah, Batman.
That's when he's with Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. He becomes Stony Stark.
So Batman, the alter ego for Stan Lee's Just Imagine Batman was Wayne Williams. He was an African American son of a police officer. He was framed by a gang leader named Hands with a Z. Hands. He was framed for a crime, sent to prison. In prison, he befriends a scientist named Frederick Grant, who teaches him how to develop his mind. And he also teaches him sewing and bodybuilding.
The sewing comes in handy.
So
already, there's one thing that you said that makes me think of a Marvel hero, and I don't know if this is how it was starting in the comics, but Miles Morales, half African American, is son to a police officer.
Yep.
So
I'm not sure. I don't think Miles Morales was created by Stan Lee, though.
I know, but that may have been something that, because obviously this isn't something DC continued, that might have been in the collective mind of whoever did end up creating Miles Morales.
Yeah. So anyway, Wayne Williams, during a prison riot, he rescues the warden, and so he is actually given a full pardon because of that. I assume not from the warden. I don't think the warden can just be like, "You're free to go."
Get on out of here, scamp.
So anyway, speaking of another Spider-Man connection, Wayne Williams becomes, because he needs money, he becomes a wrestler under the name Batman, never unmasking in public. So in a few short weeks, Batman has become a superstar in wrestling and has become extremely wealthy. He searches for Grant, Frederick Grant, the scientist he befriended in prison, entrusts him with the secret identity, and then he, to keep a low profile, he buys a mansion for Frederick Grant and poses as Grant's bodyguard. So if anyone were to ever suspect that that Grant, or they would think Grant is Batman if they tried to track the money, and so ultimately he finds and fights Hands, who accidentally falls to his death during the conflict, and so Batman then begins a mission of justice rather than vengeance.
It sounds like he goes on a mission to make sure that during fights, if someone accidentally falls, to end the fight.
It's a big part of Batman.
Yeah.
Accidental falls. So I'll just quickly go through a lot of the others. Wonder Woman, real name Maria Mendoza. So Stan Lee created that along with Jim Lee, no relation. And Maria is an activist protesting the excavation of an Incan holy site. And the CEO of this corporate excavator, of the corporation doing the excavation, wants to gain power from the site.
Ooh.
Whatever that means. Anyway, so Maria's father is kidnapped by the CEO. She follows. She's too late to prevent her father dying. The CEO gains demonic powers, travels to L.A. Maria finds the staff of Manco Capac, granting her powers of the Incan sun god. I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correctly. So she becomes Wonder Woman. She's called Wonder Woman, but instead of Greek mythology influencing the creation, this is Incan. So some Central American, South American influences there. Superman, He named him Salden instead of Kal-El. He is the weakest member of the Kryptonian police force. He uses a flying harness, and he captures a dangerous criminal in a laboratory, but it's a teleportation laboratory. He and the criminal both get teleported to a crappy little planet called Earth, and they both find that they are gaining mysterious powers and becoming more powerful on Earth.
Wow, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot because it just adds an entire layer, if he ends up still adopting the Clark Kent moniker. He's got the mindset of being a weakling, treated like crap probably on his planet, and then he's transported to another planet where he's instantly got all this power.
Yeah. Now, all he really cares about is getting back home to Krypton. So the only reason he really becomes Superman is to rid the world of crime, poverty, war, and everything, so that Earth can quickly advance technologically to the point that he can teleport himself back home.
That's cool. I like that.
Okay, Green Lantern, Len Lewis. That's this character's name, Len Lewis.
Ooh, Dave Gibbons.
Yep, co-created by Dave Gibbons and Stan Lee. There's a professor looking for something called the tree, mentioned in Norse legends as Yggdrasil, which we may be familiar from passing mentions in the MCU. And in Christianity, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He traces the plant to a tree in Africa. When he finds it, agents working for Reverend Dark shoot him and leave him for dead. But the tree shows the professor its history, including a race of pre-humans, grants him its power to serve as a lantern in these dark times.
Seems like the Green Lantern there was more of a nature thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. The Flash, Mary Maxwell.
A female.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, female.
I've heard of one of those.
She's a typical college girl with a scientist for a father. Typical college girl.
Typical.
She has a dull life, and she desperately wants to be a superhero, but she has a life-threatening disease that slowly drains her energy. One day, enemies from her father's past, named Stealth, or Special Team of Espionage Agents licensed to target and hit.
And hit.
Find and kill her father, but before he dies, he injects Mary with the DNA from a hummingbird to save her from her wasting disease. This allows her to start traveling at high speeds. She nicknames herself the Flash. Now, Robin is the one I really like, the twist on here. Stan Lee co-created Robin with John Byrne. This version of Robin, obviously. He is an embittered teen who works for the major villain of Lee's Just Imagine universe, the Reverend Dark, who apparently appeared in all the books. Dark sends Robin out on various assignments, always promising Robin something in return. The book, the Robin comic book, opens with Robin attempting his current assignment to kill Batman. So that's
the version we mentioned before.
Yep.
Wayne Williams.
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get into all these.
Yeah, we covered like the major players there, and that is really interesting. And I'm shocked that today is the first day I've learned about this, because you think that would be something more people.
Yeah, and that is why I wish it was more popular.
Awesome. Well, that's all we have for this week. So join us next week for more Stan Lee, and keep on beating.
The Bean Holes.
Look it up.